What should people know about strings?
Yeah.
Brand and gauges.
Yeah, so I use on these guitars Stringjoy 17 to 64, and it sounds crazier than it is because we're tuned down to B standard. So completely tuned down a fourth. I've just, Scott's a good friend who I think just works right up the road. It took a couple tries to just tell him, like, hey, I'd love to make baritone work on a standard scale guitar, but not make it sound like a baritone guitar where it falls into that bass region, that really tight, I don't know how to describe it. It's like its own bass region, sonically speaking. So after a couple tries, we just tried, I usually use 11s for standard tuned guitars. So, it took a few tries, like I said. I feel like I've said that just 6 times already in the last minute, but 17 for a high B versus an 11 high E felt matched down a fourth from E to B. Mm-hmm. So it's the idea behind it, and every time someone plays this, like if you play this right now, everyone's like, okay, I'm gonna go for that big bend. And it's like, oh wait, it's easy. Everyone thinks because the strings are heavier, it's a bit tougher. Mm-hmm. But it feels like 11s.
It's all about compensation.
Tuning. It's all about compensation, yeah. So it works for me. Sometimes when the weather changes and the action changes a bit, or the neck warps a bit, like it can start to feel really tough to play if you just get it set up.
Yeah.
But for the way I tour right now, I typically just have 2 guitars with me. I have no one helping me bring other guitars. If I could, I'd bring 10 guitars. I'd have a few standards, a few open E, a few open D, and with those it'd be lighter tunings. But because I don't have that luxury right now and today, I just have these, which are both the same gauge of strings, and it's just all about capoing up if I need to be in open this or open that. So yeah.
So before we move on to the Jazzmaster, what why does that come to the dance? Why, in terms of tunings, or why does that get used versus the Mule here?
Because I write in open tuning and standard tuning.
So those kind of cover both?
Yeah, and they're very different sounding guitars, first of all, of course. Mm-hmm. But the 2 different tunings, I'm very much not one tuning does it all. I really like what I get from standard, and I really like what I get from open. They almost feel like 2 different instruments, and I play kind of different in each one. Mm-hmm. Like open tuning feels more like piano to me, with a left hand and right hand when you're fretting. And standard just feels like guitar.
Yeah.
And while this still does feel like guitar, it just changes. It makes me just think a little differently, makes me play a little differently, and it inspires different ideas. So if I'm writing and I'm just feeling a little stale, I pick up an open tune guitar, and it just makes you go in a different direction. And then you might get stale on the open and you go back. So it just helps for creativity. And so I write songs in both, and that helps me cover the parts in both.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if you would be so kind to maybe put on the Jazzmaster, because I'm sure as we get through your pedals, we'll go back to the Mule. But maybe just to hear how the Jazzmaster speaks with your hands on it.
You got it. Yeah, like output-wise, it's a bit quieter than the Mule. Again, there's more dynamics. I was never a Jazzmaster guy.
Yeah, what made you go this route?
Honestly, I by accidentally tried one out. I don't know if it was like an Andertons video years ago I was doing, and it was like, hey, this is actually like I have a Nash. Bill was doing these offsets where it was like a Jazzmaster body, but a Telly.
Oh, wow.
Like a Telly Master, it was called. So I've had that forever, and it always felt funky and different, and I just like how it feels, that offset kind of thing. But I never mess with the rhythm circuit and just this configuration. And I think a big reason is because whenever I'd play a Jazzmaster standard tuning, it was very bright and kind of brittle sounding. And I know a Strat and a Telly can be like that too, but once you figure it out, you know how to deal with it. And I didn't know how to deal with it on a Jazzmaster, but I just played the right one. I was on tour. I was in London on Denmark Street. I think it was Regent Sounds. And I actually played one exactly like this, like it looked like this. The color had nothing to do with how it made me feel to play, but I just kind of connected with it, and it made me want to explore, and I had the opportunity to get one, and I just, I said, can you put it in open tuning with the lower strings? And the lower tuning, the open tuning, and like the bright pickups, the bright everything that comes with the jazz, it was a perfect blend. It was the best of both worlds, and it found this middle ground where it was not bright and brittle anymore. It wasn't too low end, it was just kind of mid-forward, a lot of highs, a lot of lows.
You swim in like warm waters when it comes musically. I feel like that your tone's more warm. So it's funny that through, I mean, obviously you have a lot of things that help color it, and I'm sure the setup and how you play and attack the instrument, but yeah, Jazzmasters are typically, think like bright, jangly machines, and the way you just kind of played it a little bit earlier was not that.
Right, exactly. And the best way I get to know an instrument is either on stage or in the studio, and I acquired it right before I started recording my record Headway.
Okay.
So it was just like, okay, in the studio, let's try it out, versus like a guitar with humbuckers, that it was like at first a bit jarring because I wasn't used to it. And I'm like, okay, so you're good at this, and you're good at that. You're gonna lean into the things it's really good at, and for the things it's not as strong at. Because I'm very much this one guitar shouldn't do it all.
Yeah.
And like this guitar, I like it a lot for my shows, for my sound. It's awesome. Does it do everything great? No. And why should it? Why should any guitar? I really think that like the Strat's great for that, Telly's great for that, Les Paul's great for whatever, you know? I think that's the beauty of instruments, is they all have their own voice and they do something really special. And it's just a matter of leaning into what they do well. But in this case, it was just, I connected with it, and then once shows started happening again, I just took it out because I hadn't been able to play any shows with it or tour with it. And I've been using it all year as my second guitar on the road, and it just is awesome. It feels good. I've done a few shows with some other ones that I normally play with. I typically tour with, for the open tune guitar, a Collings 360 or my Josh Williams Mockingbird.
Kind of 335 type.
Killer guitars. There's no love lost there at all. But I've just gotten so used to how this feels. It's easy to play, durable with travel and stuff. I am sometimes afraid of like the Mockingbird getting damaged or something like that. Just those kind of things. It's just, it could take a beating. It's a Fender, you know?
Yeah.